Accordingly, I call this meeting of the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Committee to order, and we begin with acknowledgement that in Ottawa we would be meeting in the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin people. My particular location is Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Chinantan, or neutral First Nations historically. Pursuant to Standing Order 108-2, I see Ms. Zan has joined us. Do you want to do a quick voice check?
Sure.
Sure, we'll do that.
Yes, thank you. Look to the rose that blows about us. Low laughing, she says, into this world I blow, at once the silken tassel of my purse tear, and its treasure on the garden throw.
Thank you, Mrs. Ann. Mr. Chair, we can continue.
Thanks, Lenore, and thanks for that. And once again, we're studying, pursuant to standing orders, the study of food security in northern communities. And to ensure an orderly meeting, we've had some good discussion with our guests, and the members of the committee will know about listening and speaking in the official language of your choice. There's a selector on the interpretation button, bottom center of your screen. Make sure that your video is always turned on and speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. And once again, if we do have translation issues because of technical problems, all of our guests should have written submissions before us. And so to ensure that the meeting can continue, and we have this even with committee members, with guests, the audio drops out completely. We'll continue on because we have to be able to do the translated part of our committee meeting. Otherwise, it is not an official meeting. So with having said that, we have 6 minutes for each of our guests to open with. And I'm going to start with Mayor Randy Jones of Gros Maquetina, Quebec. Mayor Jones, you have 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Merci beaucoup. And thank you most of all for the invitation. It's not often that the people of our isolated communities from Kikaska to Blanc-Sablon get the opportunity to speak to such a distinguished panel and to get our point across that we do occupy the territory, and it is very hard, especially with this pandemic. We've been dealt a double whammy. We are isolated, and on top of that, we have to isolate, and on top of that, we have a curfew. And then to make matters worse, this winter forgot to come to us. The ice is no good. Our time to travel is in the wintertime between communities that people get a chance to go and visit their loved ones. But the ice is just not good enough yet. And it's been the trails have been worked at, but still not possible to open. There's people that have went through the ice, that have broken through. And we have been having quite a battle in order to get fresh produce and with the Nutrition North program. I think that what I'm going to be asking for is that if you people have a chance to look at Nutrition North, is that it be more adapted to the realities of our region. I sent out an invitation yesterday to a few of my fellow mayors, and not a few, all of my fellow mayors, and every one of them responded. And all the stores was basically unanimous in the sense that our travel in the summertime and the fall, right up until normally the first week of February, we have a boat that travels down the coast, the Bella de Gagne. But that broke down, and it put threw a bad wrench into the gears of the operating on the coast. And we've seen that the Hindu from Unaminchipu, La Romaine, even had to charter planes to bring in diapers and milk and food for the babies. And that was not under Nutrition North program at the time. It is now. And we have the most devitalized municipalities in the province of Quebec. We have an aging population. And a few weeks ago, we were informed that the Innu of Pakwashipi, which is next door to me, and Unaminchipu, they had a nutritionist that organized food that they would get in order to make sure that they were eating properly and have at least certain meals that were completely healthy food. So I spoke to my fellow mayors about it, and this is what we were wondering, if it's possible through Nutrition North that we do the same for our senior citizens down there. They're living on a fixed income that's way below what it costs us anywhere else to live, and it costs us more here to live. And, when you get to store to tell you that, we should speak to the government and ask them, could they help? Because the seniors are not buying much of the produce. Just to give you an example, strawberries. In the summertime, a basket of strawberries costs about $3. And last week, they were $11.98 for a basket of strawberries. And yesterday, there was produce brought in, and raspberries was going for $10.29. This, to me, I think, has to stop. And we have to be, there is a cost to keeping people in isolation and to have people occupy the territory. And that's what we've been doing. Our main industry is fishing, but the villages are isolated from each other. It's only in the wintertime that we do get a chance to travel. And now this year, that's not even there with climate change. And we don't have no big industries that cause the problem with climate change, but we're the first ones to notice it. I don't know how many minutes I got gone. I guess I'm gone over my 6 minutes, but this is basically what I wanted to tell you is that if it's possible to adjust Nutrition North, that it's not too big of a bureaucracy. And the other thing that the stores have been asking for is, like, if there's a couple of companies that's earmarked to order from, however, only one store per community can get it. And that's not fair.
Randy, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just to keep things on time, all of those points may come up again in the round of questioning, but we need to get all of our guests in for their statements and then to the questions. And I'm sure we'll get that covered. And if we don't, we'll talk about that later. But thank you for that. And now the Director of Public Health from the Nunavik Regional Board of Health and Social Services, Marie Rochette. Please go ahead for 6 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for distinguished members of the committee for having invited me to present in the framework of this study on food security in northern communities. Mr. Adami Delila-Alakou, VP of the Makivik, presented some data last December on the region of Nunavik, as well as the challenges linked to remote communities. So I'm not going to repeat what he said during his presentation, but I would like to remind you that the Parnasimatic report followed a broad consultation with the Inuit in Nunavik in 2013, and this report outlined the increasing concerns with regard to food insecurity that affects a huge amount of the population, as well as the decline of some animal species and climate change. The report highlighted the central role of resources in food security in the lifestyle and economy of the region, as well as reaffirmed the need to protect the territory and resources to ensure food security. These concerns are not new and have been the goal of sustained efforts of local and regional organizations for decades. Despite that, food insecurity is extremely high in the region. Here are some preliminary data of the Kwanilipita data in survey in 2017. The final report should be published in the summer of 2021. The data in this report, well, the survey asked the question that had been asked in 2004. Participants were asked if, during the previous month, they had experienced a moment where there was not enough food to eat at home. Nearly 34% of the Inuit said that this situation happened in 2017, and this same question had 24% answer rate in 2004, so things have not improved. In 2017, different questions were asked to try to better define the proportion of Nunavimut considered in a situation where they were experiencing food insecurity. If we include light or food insecurity, over 3/4, 78% of the people mentioned that they had experienced food insecurity over the prior year. And this proportion is higher among youth, 87% for 16 to 19-year-olds, and it is higher among pregnant women, 89%. The regional health authorities and social services of Nunavik offer support to organizations for initiatives contributing to food security, health, and wellness. Can be professional support, funding, training, networking opportunities, or resources such as toolboxes or recipes, etc. Among our initiatives, cooking activities, community kitchens, using traditional food and market-based food, activities to support people to make healthier food choices, such as outings to the store, food assistance for those who have difficulty in obtaining enough food, for example, food baskets, distribution of meals, and gardening and greenhouse projects in 4 communities. There's an increased interest in this. Also, resource or regional projects that are in cooperation with different stakeholders, such as food coupons for pregnant women, snack and lunch programs in schools, emergency food assistance for people who are quarantining or who are isolating because of COVID-19, and the Hunter Support Program and community freezers. We find these in communities. To go even further, there's a group on food security policy that was created. There's a regional working group that was implemented in 2015 following an initiative of Mekivik, the Kativik regional government, and the Regional Health Authority. This group is composed of different regional organizations in Nunavik, and its goal is to identify short, medium, and long-term solutions in order to improve access and availability of healthy food. 4 sessions were held in 2017 and 2018. Over 150 people participated. They came from all communities in Nunavik. The following themes were dealt with: access to traditional food, promotion of healthy eating, access and availability of nutritious food from the market, and production and local processing. Priority themes were discussed. Number one, improving access to traditional food. Improving access, quality, and availability of market-based nutritional food. To support the development of knowledge and skills. And last, to promote partnership engagement and community decision-making. The following steps are to finalize this policy. I have to say that COVID-19 has unfortunately had to put the brakes on this initiative, so we hope that we will be able to do this again soon, and then to prepare an action plan, a 5-year action plan, and have the engagement of all stakeholders, whether it be local, regional, provincial, federal stakeholders. I will conclude by mentioning that the vision in this policy and by the vision of stakeholders that contribute would be a system that includes traditional and non-traditional food, anchored in the earth, local resources, culture, and Inuit values. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Madame Rochette. And we now have the Chief Network Services Officer from Food Banks Canada, Kirsten Beardsley. Please go ahead, Ms. Beardsley, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm going to speak specifically to the Food Banks Canada experience right now. As you know, food insecurity exists in every community across this country. Prior to the pandemic, there were over 1 million visits to food banks in Canada every single month, and we anticipate that this number will grow in the months and years ahead. And as you also know, food insecurity is even higher in northern communities. The stats are so hard to take, but with 57%, for example, of households in Nunavut being food insecure. These crisis level food insecurity stats are linked with crisis levels of poverty in the north. In every part of the country, food insecurity is a symptom of poverty and low income levels. But in the north, this is combined with very high costs of food, along with the logistical challenges that create limited access to food, which just creates a perfect storm for food insecurity in northern regions. Food banks are not the solution to food insecurity anywhere in Canada. But while government policy and other programs take time to enact, food banks and other community groups are there to provide much needed support. That said, food banking in the north comes with additional challenges as well, including lack of resources, a lack of infrastructure, and a lack of personnel, not to mention the more difficult challenges of accessing food itself. During the pandemic, with thanks to the Government of Canada and other national donors, Food Banks Canada was able to support many northern communities with food and funds to address these needs. This includes millions of dollars in funding and over 500 million pounds of healthy frozen protein to over 90 communities across the north. This wouldn't have been possible without the commitment and help of local community members who made the food shipments work. And I can't even tell you how much those community members are heroes in making sure the food got to the people in need. They helped find food storage, which is an issue in the north, especially frozen food storage, worked on distribution, finding additional partners to get distribution beyond their communities into other communities in need, and worked to notify community members of available food. Further, partnerships with third parties like the Arctic Co-op and Nolinor Aviation were critical. And all of these partnerships might provide some guidance on how we work together to provide food in the future. I also wanted to share 2 quick stories from our funding. Excuse me. In Chipewyan Prairie First Nation in Alberta, funds were requested not to purchase food, but to support that community to clear a trail that had grown over in order to gain access to a lake filled with fish to provide food for that community. This high impact project will provide healthy traditional food for years to come, as well as provide a job for the laborers who are going to clear the trail over the short term. In Iqaluit, the food bank there requested that some of the funds be used to provide gas stipends to hunters, as hunting is very expensive. Hunters then share with the community. After one hunt alone, over 100 families in the community received meat. We encourage any proposed support going forward be driven by local community needs and be flexible enough to encompass solutions that don't always rely on food being shipped in from the south, including projects that increase access to country food. Food Banks Canada will continue to strengthen the relationships we've built prior to and during the pandemic and are committed to continuing to offer support for these communities over the long term. But as I said previously, the long-term solutions don't lie in food banking, which cannot address the root causes of food insecurity in the North. We believe there needs to be a multi-pronged approach, support for communities now, and long-term policy solutions, including increased social assistance rates so that people have higher minimum income floor and access to more money if they aren't able to work or find work, investing in northern economic development so that communities have access to better paying jobs and opportunities, reassessing Nutrition North through the Inuit to Crown Working Group, and develop a federal program that finally reduces the cost of food in northern communities because it's clear the current approach isn't working, and increasing the investment in local food solutions such as the ones I mentioned, including increasing access to country food programs so that local communities can continue to support themselves. In conclusion, the issue of northern food insecurity will not be solved by food and food alone. The federal government needs to address the systemic root causes of poverty and low incomes in the North while it works to reduce the cost of food and increase access to food. Only once all of these issues are addressed, we will be able to achieve our vision of a Canada where no one goes hungry. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And members of the committee, we go to questions now, and certainly excellent testimony will lead us to a number of good inquiries. So our first round will be 6 minutes. I have Mr. Vidal, Mr. Pawlowski, Madam Berube, Ms. Blaney. Gary Vidal, please go ahead. 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank all of our witnesses for the excellent testimony today. You are contributing tremendously to our study on food insecurity. I want to start with Mayor Jones. Mayor, as a former mayor, I appreciate your passion and your heart for your people. It was obvious in your testimony. And I also come from a northern and remote community, I have to admit, though, not near as remote and inaccessible as yours. In your testimony, or right near the end of your testimony, when the chair had to cut you off, you were talking about the barriers to the Nutrition North program and the entry into that. And I think you were about to give some ideas or solutions or identify maybe what those barriers were. Could I ask you to just take a minute or two and just kind of finish those comments you were making right when you got cut off?
The problem, what I've been told by most of the stores in our communities, is that it's the bureaucracy or the paperwork that's involved in order to get the program of Nutrition North. And since we've just got hooked up the last 2 months with high-speed internet, this is all new for us too. And the people don't have the funding in order to buy this food right now. We've been struck with the pandemic, like I said earlier, and most of the workers from our region goes outside to Toronto and all the highways, and that's where they're working to. But this was not permitted to do so this year. And we didn't have any funding to hire those people on, so unemployment is not 100%, and poverty is starting to take a hold, and the people just don't have the food in order to be able to do anything with. So I think if we had a look at Nutrition North and open it up so that more of the local people could get access to certain things, and suppliers, like there's one at the eastern end of the province in Blanc-Sablon, and they used to go through that, but he had to give it up because under Nutrition North, they wouldn't give him access to it anymore. So maybe that could be looked at.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that, and that's helpful for us. I want to move on now to Ms. Beardsley, and honestly, Ms. Beardsley, I think I have about 11 questions I want to ask you in the 3 minutes I have left, so I'm going to try to be quick here. You made a brief reference in your comments, and by the way, sorry, appreciated many of your comments. I have a wonderful food bank in my community, but you made a brief reference to offering some guidelines for partnerships that you have been successful. I know I looked on your website, and you talk about a bunch of partnerships with private companies, and in your testimony, you just kind of hinted at maybe some guidelines on what might make that successful. Could you just expand on that briefly for me?
Absolutely. I think just briefly, we wouldn't have been able to deliver the amount of food that we delivered into northern communities without the supports of obviously the communities themselves, but also corporate partners. Nolan Air Aviation donated a flight, which is a significant donation up into Iqaluit. We were able to deliver 26 pallets of fresh and healthy food into that community early in the pandemic. Arctic Co-ops has been working with us to make sure that there's freezer space in the communities. So I think it's going to take partnerships from charitable organizations, community groups, people from those communities, as well as the corporate sector to make sure that food access is achieved. It was simply that created best solutions for us during the pandemic, a key learning.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I want to one further question I want to pursue with you is, towards the end of your testimony, you talked about some of the programs not working. I think you specifically referred to Nutrition North not working. And just in much of your testimony, I appreciate the fact that you offered many solutions. It wasn't always just a, hey, complain that something's not working, because that's one of the things I appreciate about people. So I want to give you just I got about 1 minute left. I want to give you that time to talk about maybe some suggested improvements or some solutions that you see that would make Nutrition North more effective.
Certainly, I thank you. I'm not an expert on Nutrition North, but one of the things we've advocated for in the past is expanding Nutrition North potentially to charitable and community organizations. We pay the same costs in terms of getting food up into communities and don't receive the same subsidies. So that would be one suggestion. But overall, given that the program's been in place for a number of years and food prices are stagnant and not coming down, I think it's time to really do a full reassessment.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I think I'm right near the end of my time. I'll just give back the rest of my time rather than try to squeeze one last question in.
Thank you. That is very thoughtful. Thank you, Gary. And moving on, next we have Mr. Pawlowski. 6 minutes rather.
Thank you. I'm going to address my questions to Mayor Jones. So I think you live in a really fascinating part of the world. I was previously a doctor, and I kind of specialized in going to places which were just dots on the map. So looking where you're from, which community exactly are you from?
I'm from L'État-Batière, originally from Harrington Harbor. But when I was 6 years old, my mom used to be a telegraph operator, so we moved to Tabatier.
Okay, so I'm
Tabatier, but it's L'État-Batière.
Okay, so I'm looking at the map there. Are all the people there? Are they part Inuit and part white settler, like in Labrador, or what's their background?
Well, I have a status. I'm a Maliseet from Kakuna. My great-grandmother was a Maliseet, but the rest is white, with names like Jones and Galichon and Morancy. There's a lot of French names, but there's mostly 90% of the communities are Anglophone. We're a majority in a minority, and the majority is a minority here. We have a couple of French communities. So it just makes things a whole lot complicated. And we work closely with our Innu friends. There's two Innu communities, the Montagnais in Pakwashipi and the other in Romaine.
Okay, so were they all originally fishing communities? And then that leads to a kind of a follow-up question. How much fishing do you still do, and do you eat your own fish that you catch?
Yes, we do. the main industry of our coast is we have 16 communities from Kikaska to Blanc Sablon. It's a territory that's larger than most countries in Europe. And there's fishing is the main industry. But a few years back, I think 10 years ago, our fish plant closed in our community and we lost 75 jobs. And 75 jobs in a town like where I live, it's like 10,000 in Montreal. And that really was a low blow. And we've been trying to recover from it. And I like what Mrs. Beardsley said, but I wish that we would have those food banks. I never ever heard about that here. My wife and I have been taking some food and sharing it with people that we know that are in need. But that would be wonderful if we could have access to that. And the fish, well, when you can afford to buy it, you do. But the way the price of fish, crab, lobster, so forth is gone, the only way that one can afford to eat that is if you poach it.
So I gather then when the fishers mostly sell fish for export into other parts of Canada or to states not for local consumption.
Mostly, yep. It's from to the U.S., China, Japan. There was one young fellow from there that's starting a fish store, and last summer was the first time that live lobster was shipped from the Quebec North Shore to China. And that was an unbelievable feat. But the price has gone so high that the local people really can't afford to buy that, like the crab and the lobster. Codfish is a thing of the past. Turbot, well, we do get a bit of that, but that's only a certain few fishermen that'll drop in when they're fishing, but they mostly sell to Newfoundland.
So I'm looking at a map here of I gather where you're from, and there are a lot of little communities speckled along the coast. So you mentioned like ice roads and not being able to use them, but are there any communities inland? And I would have thought all your food came from boats. No, is that not true?
No, it comes in by plane. As of this year, the second week of January, they started transporting the food by plane. We have an airstrip. It's not an airport, it's an airstrip. And there was an accident a few years ago here. And the guy from Transport Canada told me that this is, in my community, Tabatcher, it's like the airstrip is like an aircraft carrier. He told me that it's one of the 3 most dangerous airports in Canada, Eastern Canada. And I asked him what number, and he said, you make the decision. We almost lost 18 women that had to go to the hospital in Blanc Sablon for mammograms. My wife was one of them. And the plane, in a matter of inches, had it not been for the pilot and his skill, saved them from losing 18 women in a small community. That would have been a hacks in the back, put it that way.
No. Do I still have time?
Okay. Marcus, no, we're right out. What a fascinating story. I hope we'll pick up more later. Madam Bérubé, please go ahead. 6 minutes. Microphone.
Microphone.
Madam Bérubé.
Oui, bonjour.
Hello. I'm very pleased that the witnesses have appeared before the committee. My question will be the following for Mrs. Rochette. You spoke about traditional food during your presentation. Why is this so important with regards to food security? With regards to traditional food, This is all the food that comes from gathering, hunting, fishing. It can be marine resources, hunting, or gathering of fruit. We know that traditional foods, generally speaking, have a higher nutritional value than what's available in the market. Many studies have shown that on one hand, the protein content, the fiber content of this food makes it so that people who consume traditional foods are less prone to anemia, for example, among pregnant women. And this is an issue that we have. We have demonstrated that the presence of healthy fats, omega-3 fats, was protective against cardiovascular illnesses. And we're also, the interpreter, sorry, but there is a second microphone that is on.
I'm sorry, we'll have to stop for a moment. Mr. Clerk, issue with some microphones.
I'm not sure. I don't see any that are open that shouldn't be currently.
The interpreter was having a problem. I'll give you the 30 seconds back, Madame Rochette. Ms. Bérubé, please go ahead.
Also, with regards to food preferences during the 2017 survey, we asked what people preferred to eat, and a high percentage of the population said that they preferred to eat only traditional food, especially the elders, or a mix of traditional and non-traditional food. So this has a high level of importance for the Inuit here. And linked to that, the fact of going on the land is an important part of their food. Traditional activities of hunting, fishing, and gathering are important determinants of health for the Inuit population. The transmission of cultural knowledge, the use of the land, all these things are linked to better physical, social, and mental health of the citizens. And this also contributes to good health, but also can potentially contribute to the economy of these communities and also helps with their identity. I don't hear your second question, Mrs. Bérubé. Oh, sorry. When you speak about traditional food, are there still issues with regards to traditional food in the community, such as in Nunavik and elsewhere in Quebec and Canada? In other words, are there issues with regards to traditional food? Well, if we take, for example, the example of caribou, we know that there has been a decline of some caribou herds. And so in some communities, caribou is increasingly difficult to hunt. People have to go further from their communities to have access to this traditional food. Climate change is an extreme is a huge concern for the Inuit, and they see over the years the extent to which this has had an impact on flora and fauna. Also, access to hunting and fishing grounds. With climate change, as we were hearing earlier, we're talking about the fact that there's less ice. The ice is formed further, and so the hunters have difficulty in moving around. You also spoke about the policy on food safety for Nunavik. Could you elaborate a little bit more on this policy that's not finalized yet? Answer: yes. Improving access to traditional food is access for each of the individuals. We try to improve access to hunting tools and the ability to move around, but also to see how this could create jobs and improve the socioeconomic situation. Inuit would like to be able to participate in integrated management of fauna in order to ensure sustainability for years to come. Also, there's the issue of access to quality market items and high nutrition foods. to improve the supply chain. Also, the spending power of families, this is important to be able to have access to healthy food, and a will from many communities to produce food locally. I was mentioning earlier community projects for greenhouses, for example. We could also have small farms, and also the reinforcement of support activities for food. Now, with regards to development of skills, we want to make sure that youth are able to continue to have learning opportunities with regards to traditional hunting, gathering, and fishing activities, and are able to continue the food education so that healthy choices can be made. And also to work on skills development of local entrepreneurs in the food sector and to develop leaders in Nunavik. And the last thing, the commitment of the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we have Ms. Blaney for 6 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Well, thank you, Chair, and I want to thank everybody for your testimony today. I found that extremely informative. My first question is going to come to you, Mayor Jones. Thank you so much for being here with us today. You talked a lot about Nutrition North and the need for it to be more adaptive to the needs of the people in your region. You talked a lot about seniors, about young mothers, pregnant women, for example. I'm just wondering if you would say that maybe the federal government needs to change the Nutrition North program so that it becomes more of a social program benefiting all people in your community versus subsidies just to the grocery stores. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, that's basically what, this was very short notice, and I didn't get a chance to do all the consultation that should have been done. But we are fighting with our people for our people to survive right now. This is not just a whim. We are fighting for survival. And I think that Nutrition North has the capacity to help those isolated. We only have about 5,000 people, all told, in the 15 communities. And of that, there's over 1,000 Innu, and they've been really taken care of. So that is, that's just the thing of it is that we have to sit down. I think that Nutrition North, or the people that runs that program, should sit down and look at and speak with the communities that it supplies and see what can be done to improve it. Not to take it away, but to improve it.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate it. You also talked about what's happening with climate change and the fact that it doesn't feel like you've gotten a real winter. I'm just wondering if you could talk specifically about what's happening around the climate changing, the lack of ice, and food security.
Well, that's one of the major things that have hit us this year. There's Harrington Harbor. It's an island. And up until 3 days ago, those people have been stuck on that island and could not get to the mainland. And they burn wood. And every other year, they get the ice bridge that goes to the island, and they get their wood on that was coming out with a load of wood, and he lost his Comodik or sleigh, whatever you want to call it. We call it Comodik. And he turned to go back, and he went through the ice. So that's terrible. And then last night, I had a call. My son-in-law was down between here and St. Augustine. He has the contract to mark the trail. And he met up with 2 Innu ladies that were coming from La Romaine. And he don't know where they went to or how they passed to get where they were to, because it's not marked. And there's an 11-kilometer bay they have to cross to get to St. Augustine. And they were way inside of that. And their skidoo was broken. He had to take them to the camp, let them call on the cell phone to get somebody to come pick them up. We are the first to see the effects of climate change. You know, we're in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and you look at what's happening here, it's the same thing with the fishery. When the fishery started to go, we raised the alarm first that there's a problem with the fishery. And lo and behold, we were right. And now this climate change is hitting us full front, and it's impossible to explain and tell you what effect it's having on the people of our community, because wintertime is the time that they do their chores. They cut the wood, they go fishing through ice fishing and rabbit hunting and all that, and that's not even on the table. So this is why that this program is so important, to have nutritious food for the people, especially the seniors, so that we don't have to worry. That's our most cherished asset that we have is the seniors. And we don't want to see anything happen to them because of this pandemic, so that they have the nutritious food to eat.
Thank you so much. And my last question, and the little bit of time I have, is to Ms. Beardsley. You talked about the Food Bank Canada investing in harvesting local food. I'm just wondering how much money went into that, and if you could get that to the committee. And anything you'd like to add on that.
Yes, sure. I can certainly get that. I don't have the exact amounts on me right now, but when we did our grant for rural and northern communities, we really drove the application by local community needs versus driving, sort of a prescriptive application. And so a lot of the requests, much of it was for purchasing food, because that's sort of the critical immediate need. But there were some, like the ones I mentioned, that were more specific to accessing traditional and country foods. And we would support that going forward. We're working through another grant application now to support communities, but I can get you that information.
Thanks very much. We now go to a 5-minute round, starting with 5 minutes. I have Mr. Schmale, Mr. Van Couverden, Madame Bérubé, Ms. Blaney again, Mr. Viersen, and Mr. Batiste. Jamie Schmale, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair, and hello, witnesses. Thank you very much for this great testimony. It's been very nice hearing from the contributions you're making here and within their communities. Maybe I'll start with the mayor, if I could. The mayor talked about right off the top, and I think I missed some of it, but you were talking about some of the barriers to accessing some of these programs, and I believe it was Nutrition North is what you were referring to. You talked about the bureaucracy involved in accessing some of the programs. One, did I get the program right? And two, can you explain some of the bureaucratic hurdles that you were talking about?
This is what I've had come from some of the store owners that sent me their problem with the Nutrition North program. It is the Nutrition North. It's a great program, but there is things that need to be changed. Like it's so far and so much paperwork to do that there's not every supplier that will keep their license in order to sell through to Nutrition North. And on the eastern end of the province, like we have 2 municipalities, Bonne-Espérance and Blanc-Sablon, and they're connected by road. And they normally buy their produce, it comes across on the ferry from Newfoundland, but there is a supplier in Blanc-Sablon. But due to the bureaucracy and so much paperwork that needs to be done, they can't. They just don't bother with it. It's too much to do. And it's like, I don't know if you understood what I said, but we are an Anglophone, 90% Anglophone communities. And that needs to be done mostly in French with all the suppliers. And some of the people just don't have that ability to do so. But some of us do speak French, and the ones that can't, well, that's a problem. It's not by choice. It's a geographical error, if you want to look at it that way. But we never ever knew that the rest of the province was French till we could get out and see the big centers.
Okay, so what recommendations would you give the committee if to help with this problem? I have a few other questions, but yeah, maybe we can start with that.
I think that the thing that would be the most helpful is if they could meet with some of those store owners and the people, the leaders. I am also the warden of our RCM, Regional County Municipality, that regroups all the 5 mayors together. And I think that would be a wonderful tool that could be, if we were given the time, that we could tell you exactly what needed to be done or what needs to be done.
Okay, perfect. Maybe I'll just ask quickly about Highway 138. Maybe you can tell us a bit about that and how, I'm assuming just by the article I'm reading here that you and others believe that could significantly help with the food insecurity issue.
Well, that's definite. I've devoted the last 20 years of my life for the 138, and that is the only solution. The airfare, it costs us more to travel from my community to Tête-à-la-Baleine, which is 30 kilometers away, than it do to travel from Montreal to France. And that's, I'm not kidding you, that's exactly what, from here to Sept-Îles is $1,200 one way, $2,400 return. And we don't have that kind of money. The people don't have that. The only people that you'll see traveling on the planes is people that's sent out for the hospital or for the big companies that's working. Highway 138, the minister, the federal minister announced this fall, just before Christmas, $185 million from the federal government and $232 million from the provincial government. And they're supposed to start the construction as of this year. Oh, now that's not to get it all done, but that's in part. And if we could get that done and probably get some of the communities linked together where there's bigger airports, well, then you could look at a bigger airplane to provide the service and bring in the fresh fruit and produce, and that would be picked up at the airport, because 35 kilometers or 50 kilometers by truck is not very far, but it costs a fortune.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mayor Jones. We'll move along quickly to Adam Van Koeverden for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses who are here today for all of the context and your perspective and your insight. It's so valuable for this committee and for everybody studying this important issue of food insecurity. Mayor Jones, I just wanted to let you know, while you were talking, I Googled Harrington Harbor, and it looks like a type of place that I'd love to visit one day. It's beautiful. I know it's a place that's fraught with challenges, but it's an amazing looking place, and I'd love to visit one day. Ma première question s'adresse à Madame Rochette. Désolé, un moment.
My first question is for Mrs. Rochette. My first question is for Mrs. Rochette. I'm sorry for my French, but it's a good opportunity for me to practice. And so my question concerns the interaction between the provincial program, the land program,
version of the federal program, the Harvester Grant, et la subvention fédérale pour le...
And the federal grant for harvesters. Do these two programs work well together? And if not, what would work better? First of all, thank you. I hope that my internet connection is good enough so that you can hear me. I see that my internet connection is not that strong. My organization is not responsible for that program. It's mostly the Kativik Regional Association that is responsible for grant programs, grants to hunters and fishers in Nunavik. So I'm not really able to answer specifically.
Programs and the programs that do fund hunters and gatherers and fishers and traditional food suppliers, how they're interacting with the Harvesters Grant. Because I understand the Harvesters Grant might be available, but I would like to make sure that the federal program is intersecting well with regional programs and provincial programs. And any insight that that you might have. I was just looking at the public health website of Nunavik. But you did mention how important these programs were for the mental health and the vitality of people and being able to live on the land. Do you have any recommendations for how this program or these programs could continue to work better or work better together?
Oui, je vais répondre en français.
I'm going to answer in French. On one hand, there are direct grant programs to the hunters, and in a perspective of allowing the sharing of products in the communities and to ensure availability of products, availability of community freezers, for example. This is managed by the Kativik Regional Association, as I was saying earlier. At the Health Authority, it's the On the Land program. And it's not necessarily whether people are going hunting or fishing, but that they go on the territory. It could be to go hunt or fish, but could be to go camping, to learn to live in nature on the land. So these two programs can be seen jointly, but the perspective of the On the Land program is to allow people, such as elders or younger people, to go on the land and to be able to have access to the land. Otherwise, if they don't have access to snowmobiles or four-wheel drive vehicles, for example, it's difficult for them to practice these activities. So I would say that the two are complementary. They're not pursuing the same goals. One is support for food security, and the second is to allow skills acquisition and to allow access to the land with the objective of improving mental health and other things as well.
Merci, Madame Rochette.
That brings us to time. Thanks,
okay.
Mr. Vancouverton. We're right up to time, committee. I'm going to permit Madame Bérubé and Ms. Blaney to ask their questions, and then that will take us 5 minutes over, and we have some important in-camera business to continue with. So, Madame Bérubé, please go ahead, 2.5 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you. My question is for Mayor Jones. Are all the elements available all through the year, regardless of the season? For example, does the price of food change according to the seasons, Mr. Jones?
Absolument, Madame Bérubé.
Yes, absolutely, Mrs. Bérubé. As I explained earlier, strawberries cost $2.50 or $3 for a basket of strawberries in the summer, and right now they're $12 for a basket of strawberries. The same is true for milk. the prices change constantly. Not necessarily for all food, but often, and many foods. Recently, prices have gone up everywhere. Therefore, it's very difficult for elders to supply themselves with healthy food. Even when stores say, well, I had a lady call me this morning to tell me that the most important challenge for her is that it breaks her heart to see that elders are not able to buy fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables. So, Mrs. Berube, this is definitely a problem. Thank you.
30 seconds.
Votre micro est sur sourdine.
Your micro's on mute. Your mic's on mute. Sorry. You spoke about a grocer. You talked about Nutrition North, rather. Could you briefly talk about this? Nutrition North, well, I think that now it's my microphone that's not on.
Oui, Nutrition.
Mrs. Berube, Nutrition North does not have the same amount of stores. They have one store in Baie-Comeau, in the western side of the province, and the other one is in Blanc-Sablon. Not everyone is able to purchase any stuff from Blanc-Sablon. They don't have the necessary paperwork to be able to purchase through Nutrition North. I think that there's a lot of room for improvement.
Mayor Jones, I'm very sorry to interrupt. We're over time, and we've got to go to Ms. Blaney for her 2.5 minutes. Rachel, please go ahead.
Thank you, Speaker. And I'll ask just one question of two witnesses. In your testimony, Ms. Beardsley and Ms. Rochette, you spoke about the lack of food storage infrastructure and the challenges that brings to the work you do. I'm just wondering if I could start with you first, Ms. Beardsley, if you could talk about what recommendations you would make around this to our committee.
Yeah, thank you. It has been a critical challenge to find places in communities where we can store, in particular, frozen fresh food. And I think that just requires a recognition that there is expense. Cold chain is expensive, and it requires investments and care. I have seen the community freezers that Madame Rochette speaks of work in many communities. In larger communities, we need ongoing infrastructure and support year-round, so that there are people in place who are able to maintain that. You can't just put in a walk-in cooler and walk away. You have to have people in place to maintain it. So it requires investment, ongoing investment, to ensure the infrastructure is there. It's been one of the most critical challenges in moving the food throughout the north.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add, Madame Rochette?
Yes, I'd like to add that in Nunavik, perhaps it's not a question of storage infrastructure, such as the transportation issues, especially in communities that are remote, that are further away. They're really remote communities. When products arrive, they must arrive by air, and in very cold temperatures, it's very difficult to have a head of lettuce, for example. So there are huge issues with regard to transportation. It's hard to ensure that the food supply can arrive in good shape.
Thank you so much. I'm done.
Thank you so much. Witnesses, your testimony has been outstanding. I regret my interruptions and the need to conform with the time requirements, but I think we're all impressed, and and much will be made of what you've told us to our recommendations. Thank you so much. This meeting is now suspended for 5 minutes to allow everyone to come back for the in-camera portion. Thank you.